The Kybalion is a study of the Hermetic philosophy of ancient Egypt and Greece, written by 3 initiates. The Kybalion contains the 7 Hermetic Principles, which I will cover in 7 videos. These secret doctrines, based upon world-old Hermetic teachings, help us to understand the nature of reality and the nature of self. It's important that us as light bringers understand these teachings, and not just those who would seek to control us. Hence, I give you my understanding of them.
I'm No.7, and I help people realise the infinite nature of self and of reality. The Hermetic principle of gender, one of the 7 Hermetic principles of the Kabalion. Here's a quote for you. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. So I'm going to explain the Hermetic principle of gender for you today. Now, gender is in everything. It's always at work. It's in absolutely everything on all planes. In our physical reality, it manifests as males and females in sex. But on higher planes of existence, such as the mental plane, thought manifests everything after all. Masculine and feminine manifests in different ways, not just in terms of sex, reproduction, the male and the female physical body. It's more than that. So in terms of the physical plane, gender is always generating, regenerating and creating. You can see that in the animal kingdom and in plants and in humans. Also, our cells are always generating and regenerating. The cells reproduce due to creative catalysts they receive and they're driven to produce. This is a mixing of the masculine and feminine and reproduction in all kinds of beings on this plane. It's the 2 energies, the polar opposites, coming together to create new life. The drive from the masculine and the creating from the feminine to create new life on the physical plane. Now, every biological male contains feminine elements, and every biological female contains masculine elements. And this is more on the level of mind. Now, first of all, we need to separate out the thinking about masculine and feminine, meaning sex, meaning physical sex. We need to separate the thinking, because when I refer to masculine, I'm talking about masculine energies. And when I refer to feminine, I'm talking about feminine energies. So in talking about masculine energies, we're talking about reason, logic, analytical thought, and drive and will. And when I talk about feminine energies, I'm talking about creativity, intuition, imaginative thought, emotion, and empathy. So you can see the difference here. We're not talking about physical sex, male and female. We're talking about different aspects of gender. The masculine being very left-brained. It's the left brain that's meant to represent the masculine side of things, and the right brain representing the feminine side of things. Now, every biological male and every biological female has a left and a right brain. So we're talking about the energies within here. The masculine energies are very logical and analytical, almost straightforward and kind of cold in a way. There's drive and will to do things. That's what the masculine energy represents. But the feminine energy is more the emotional, nurturing, creative, intuitive energies. Now, again, I'm not saying that men are all just logical, left brain, driven, cold monsters or something, and women are all fluffy, passive, intuitive, creative people lacking drive or anything like that. What I'm saying is, in talking about the energies of gender, every human being has a mix of these. So you may get a man, a biological man, who has more of a leaning towards the gender of female. He might be more intuitive and creative and nurturing, and may not have too much drive and the ability to logically plan out what he wants to do. Then you may have a biological female who's very logical, great at planning things out, lots of drive, but not too much creativity to make anything new. But it doesn't mean she's a man inside, or it doesn't mean he's a lady inside. Although on the physical plane we do have leanings towards being straight or gay, for example, but we're not talking about that in this video. We're talking about the masculine and feminine energies and how they intermix within our consciousness and within reality. Here's a quote from the Kabalion for you. The tendency of the feminine principle is always in the direction of receiving impressions, while the tendency of the masculine principle is always in the direction of giving out or expressing. So we see in this way, the feminine energy is a lot about receiving impressions in terms of creating new ideas, creating thoughts, following intuition, following feelings here. But the masculine energy is a lot about giving out, pushing forward, expressing. And this is done more in a logical, analytical way. So these two energies, when you mix them up in a good balance, you have someone who's able to very creatively express themselves and have the desire and drive to do so. So you may look at yourself and think, to what elements your mental balance is leaning towards the masculine or the feminine in terms of energies, in terms of these characteristics, which are interwoven into our very reality. It's part of the parameters of this existence that these two energies, these two polarities, swings in between, this duality, will mix together, and each person will be slightly different. A slightly different mixture of each of these two masculine and feminine energies and their different characteristics. Every person is different in their balance of these energies. Here's another example for you. When I go and create a video, I use a mixture of my masculine and feminine energies. So I might have an idea of what topic to create. I'm being creative. I use my intuition to feel for what I should say and what would be the right thing to put out at the right time that people need to hear at the moment. I put emotion into it. I put love into it for my work. But if I didn't have the masculine energy too, I might just rest on my laurels and maybe not get too much done. Because the masculine energy allows me to move forward with it. It allows me to plan out my work, plan my time schedule. I use logic as well in order to write some points down of what I might say. And then I sort of might analyse my work afterwards a little bit to make sure it's up to scratch. So you see, I use a mixture of the masculine and feminine energies here in order to create successful work. And also in this way, you can see that we're not talking about male and female physical sex at all, or any kind of sexual orientation. We are talking about the masculine and feminine energies here. The Hermetic principle of gender employs the Hermetic principle of duality quite a lot, because we have two different sides of a coin here. Now, a lot about learning to master the Hermetic principle of gender is bringing together this duality in order to balance somewhere in between perhaps, or somewhere where we intuitively feel we want to be. There's no harm in leaning towards the feminine energies in our mind, in our thoughts, in our behaviours and the way we are, and there's no harm in leaning towards the masculine energies. Everyone balances differently, everyone experiences their own reality differently, and in different professions that we have, many professions rely heavily on the masculine principles, such as in finance, in banking, in insurance, things that involve a lot of counting, and in scientific work and data collection and analysis, things like that. And then there's other professions that rely heavily on the feminine principle here, which is creative. You might be a planner and need to think outside the box in creating new ways forward. In social work as well, social organisations for helping people and helping the needy. You may literally be very creative and be an artist. You might be a house painter and decorator. You might be an architect. An architect is an interesting mix of the masculine and feminine because it requires a lot of both. So you see, different professions that we're drawn to cause us to lean towards the masculine or feminine, just according to our bias and preferences. So we don't all have to balance in the middle. We may prefer to lean one way or the other in terms of our ways of thinking and our behaviours. You might be able to think of a man or a woman who is highly logical. They might be highly analytical and very driven. They might not be too emotional. They might seem rather cold, perhaps because they haven't got the intermix of the feminine energy there too much. This could be a man or a woman. So they may be relying heavily on their masculine energies. That's their predisposition. That's the way they are. Then think of a man or a woman who's a bit of a dreamer. They're a creative dreamer. Perhaps they're quite emotional and they're swept up in their emotions quite a lot, but they lack the ability to plan much. They lack the ability to focus and sort of get on with things logically. You might know a man or a woman like that. And so you see once more the leaning towards the masculine and the feminine energies and how they are in all of us. Just quick, I can see masculine and feminine energies in the animal kingdom too. I have 2 cats. One of them is very loving and wants lots of cuddles and is always trying to be cute and roll over and show its tummy. This I perceive as quite a feminine energy cat. Then I have another cat which seems a little colder. It likes to be stroked now and again, or she likes to be stroked a bit now and again, but just rather prefers to be in the room with us and will remind us at the same time every day when it's time to be fed. Now I see this cat as being more of a masculine energy cat, although they are both females. Here's another quote from a Kybalion for you. The part of the masculine principle seems to be that of directing a certain inherent energy towards the feminine principle, and thus starting into activity the creative processes. But the feminine principle is the one always doing the active creative work, and this is so on all planes. And yet each principle is incapable of operative energy without the assistance of the other. So you see, the masculine principle directs energy towards the feminine principle, which holds the creative keys, if you will, and then together it moves forward to create. The masculine sort of provides a bit of fuel, and the feminine also provides a bit of fuel, but in terms of being able to facilitate things happening. So you see, it takes two. It's a process of co-creation. This is the same as in electrical current or magnetism, where you have opposite poles. The positive is meant to represent the masculine and the negative the feminine. And may I say that the word negative, as it states in the Kabalion, when representing electrical poles or magnetic poles, negative representing feminine does not mean negative. There's nothing negative about it. So in a circuit, there's both positive and negative. And with magnets, again, there would be no magnetic field if there was not a positive and a negative. So both come together in order to create. Einstein pointed out, imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited to all we now know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there ever will be to know and understand. So what I believe Einstein is saying here, or was saying here, is that In the scientific community, one needs to be imaginative and see the bigger picture, and intuitive in order to feel for the theories and outcomes and methods and conclusions. Imagination and creativity and intuition is important, but our society is very masculine driven. I'm not talking about wage gaps or anything like that in this video. I'm talking about the nature of mind, the gender balance. Our society is very masculine energy driven because a lot is done via pure logic without the feminine energy touch. So you could take education. A lot of it is very analytical, it's very logical, with not too much emphasis on creativity or even emotion too much. All kinds of systems are in place. And I already mentioned science, and then you've got politics and other things like that. A lot of it is very masculine energy driven, and a lot in business too. So this points to the fact that if we want our society to balance a bit more, the feminine energy needs to be employed in more areas of society in order to make it more balanced, like our minds try to and wish to be, because you need both poles in order to move forward more effectively. The Hermetic principle of gender is also a lot like the Hermetic principle of polarity. There's swings in between the energetic forms of the masculine and the feminine. Some days you might feel very creative, you might feel like a bit of a dreamer, you might feel a bit emotional. You might also feel a little bit less powerful, a bit passive. And then another day you might feel more masculine energy coming in, you might feel more powerful, a lot more motivation, and you want to plan out what's going on. You might be more analytical with the way you deal with people and using less empathy in your communication, just depending on your mood. So like the principle of polarity, which refers to the swings between the duality, the swings between the poles, we can sort of swing between masculine and feminine energies ourselves, just depending on the day. So almost drawing to a close now. With the masculine and feminine principles in terms of thought and mind, the masculine and feminine energies, there's a further sort of duality of mind. So the masculine could be represented as being objective thought, and the feminine way of thinking could be subjective thought. And then the masculine representing the conscious mind, the conscious analytical mind, and the feminine representing the subconscious mind, where your emotions are stored and your intuition comes from and your memories are. In addition, the masculine energy can represent voluntary decisions, voluntary thinking, voluntary logic really. And the feminine energy can represent involuntary. The subconscious is very involuntary. We don't choose to have emotions, they just pop up. We don't choose to have thought often. Thoughts and memories just pop up. So corresponding with the subconscious mind, involuntary can be termed as a feminine sort of aspect as well. And in this same way, being active is a masculine energy, and being passive a feminine energy. I'm not saying women are passive, I'm saying that being passive is sort of classed as a feminine energy, a feminine slant mixed together with the masculine energy within a woman creates the drive here. So just to sum up, it's part of our ascension really to balance in some way these masculine and feminine energies within thought, within our being, within our energy, our vital energies, the energies of our mind, body, spirit complex. Now, as I said, we don't always have to balance in the middle, but just being conscious of your masculine and feminine energies and what feels right for you and where you feel intuitively you will balance. Intuition being a feminine energy there. So you can bring the poles together a little bit. If you're swinging way towards the masculine or swinging way towards the feminine, consider how you could use the other to better enrich your existence. in order to do what you want to do or succeed more, in order to interact with others more. If you're very logical and cold interacting with people, how can I employ my feminine energies more? How can I do that? Through empathy, perhaps, through understanding, through listening, through examining their emotions and mine. If you're very emotionally reactive, very sensitive person, wait a minute, how can I employ some masculine energies here? How about I could think through things a bit more logically? Just stop, choose to stop. That's the conscious, voluntary choice there. Choose to stop and think these things through logically for a minute before taking reactive action. So if you're very swinging one way or the other, you can look at the other pole and think, how can I employ that in my existence in order to enrich my life? So if you think of yourself as a very left-brained person or a very right-brained person, you can consider mixing it up a bit with the other side of your brain. The logical, analytical drive and will is within all of us. And the creative, intuitive, emotional, imaginative side is within all of us. We can mix these up however we choose to be. It's becoming conscious and aware of the Hermetic principle of gender, which helps us on our spiritual path, helps us to evolve and ascend. So I hope that's been helpful for you today on the Hermetic principle of gender. And I have covered the other 6 Hermetic principles in other videos, and you'll see links in the description or a link to a playlist. I have put them all in. And please consider supporting this channel via Patreon and receive an extra video per week from me, often question and answer sessions as well. And remember to click subscribe if you're not already a subscriber to receive regular spiritual inspiration on your journey through life, and that bell button too for notifications, because we're raising the mass vibration together. So go now in love and peace.